He buries it like he wants to break the rim. He smiles like he's playing in his backyard. And he looks at the big moments as if they were written for him. Anthony Edwards is not just another promising young player. He's a hurricane of charisma, strength, and confidence. A born competitor with a killer instinct. And the kind of star the NBA doesn't often see emerge. From the moment he stepped on the court for the first time, he left a clear message. I'm not here to fit in. I came to take over. In a world where many athletes train to look special, Edwards simply is. With his disarming smile and violent dunks, he has become the kind of player you stop everything to watch. Because at any second, something absurd could happen. Today, you'll understand why Anthony Edwards isn't just the future of the NBA. He could be the name that defines the next era. Childhood and beginning in sport. Before fame. Before the NBA. There was just a kid from Atlanta, full of energy, intensity, and a twinkle in his eye that no one could explain. Anthony Devante Edwards was born on August 5th, 2001, and at the age of 3, he already had a nickname that seemed like destiny. Ant-Man. Small, fast, unpredictable, just like the hero, but also with a hidden power, waiting for the right time to explode. Raised by his mother, Yvette, and his grandmother, Shirley, Anthony grew up far from his father, but surrounded by love and discipline. Even without luxury, he had what mattered most: structure and values. Oddly enough, basketball wasn't his first passion. Before the orange ball came the oval. In American soccer, he was a monster. Quarterback, running back, smart, fast, unbeatable. The NFL seemed like the right destination. Until, at the age of 13, an ankle injury changed everything. Unable to play, stuck with an unresponsive body, Anthony saw soccer slipping away. It was there, almost by chance, that basketball came into the picture. It started as a joke, but watching his brother dunk with lightness and explosion was enough to awaken something inside him. I'm going to do it too, and I'm going to be the best. From then on, Ant-Man changed fields, balls, and plans, and he began to write the story of one of the NBA's future icons. Transition to basketball. The ankle injury had ended one dream, but it made room for another. American soccer was left behind, and basketball entered Anthony Edwards' life almost as a consolation. But it soon turned out to be destiny. At first, it was just curiosity, a hobby, but there was something different. Even without technique, Anthony seemed to understand the game with his body. He exploded toward the basket, moved naturally, and played as if he'd been doing it for years. It was at the age of 14 that everything really started to change. He was still raw. His shot was shaky. His ball control was limited. But he had something no one could teach him: hunger, an insatiable desire to learn, improve, and win. That's when Justin Holland came along, the coach who would change his life. Holland saw beyond the physical. He understood the mind of a competitor, the humility to listen, the obsession to evolve. And together they began an intense transformation. Pitching mechanics, dribbling, defense, reading the game. Nothing was superficial. It was all hard work. While other teenagers played video games or went to parties, Anthony spent hours on the court. He practiced. He made mistakes. He corrected. He repeated. He studied videos. I imitated legends. And I turned every failure into fuel. Little by little, the game stopped being a novelty. It became a territory. Anthony began to stand out on the local circuits. It was a rare combination: the physique of a winger, the agility of a playmaker, and eye-catching audacity. The kid who barely knew how to dribble was flying over defenders, burying in traffic, taking the game to himself. But more than learning to play, he learned to compete. And that's when everything changed. Ant-Man was no longer just a cute childhood nickname. It became a symbol of something bigger. A warning. He was still small on the scene, but he already carried a strength that no one else could ignore. Tragedy, sacrifice, and the forging of a warrior. Anthony Edwards' adolescence wasn't just difficult. It was brutal. Before he even turned 14, he had already experienced losses that many adults never face. In January 2015, his mother, Yvette, passed away after battling cancer. It was more than the pain of losing a loved one. It was like losing your ground. Yvette was his safe haven, his greatest encourager, the woman who guided him with firmness and affection. 8 months later came the second blow. His grandmother, Shirley, who had taken on the role of second mother, also lost her life to cancer. In less than a year, Anthony lost his two greatest references, the two women who taught him the value of strength, faith, and resilience. With no time to grieve, he went to live with his older brothers, who were still teenagers trying to support themselves. Routine became survival. But instead of wallowing in the pain, Edwards made a silent pact. He would win for them. And that's how the number 5 began to appear on their jerseys, a symbol of the day they both left and of the promise he would carry forever. Basketball became his outlet and his new purpose. But achieving his dreams would require sacrifices, and he was willing to do anything. Still in the midst of his grief, Anthony made a brave decision. He transferred to Holy Spirit Preparatory School, an elite private school in Atlanta. The environment was completely different from what he knew. Upper-class students, strict school routine, intense demands. He felt out of place, but never defeated. To accelerate his path to university, Anthony reclassified, a bold move for a teenager. He moved up a school year and put even more pressure on himself. The routine was insane. Studying, training, little sleep. There were days when he slept on the floor of a teacher's office, simply because he had nowhere to rest between classes. But the hunger never went away. Soon, his numbers began to explode. 29 points and 10 rebounds per game in his final year. Dominant, unstoppable, a monster among boys. But it wasn't just the statistics that really caught the EYE. IT was the intensity with which he played. Every game was like a personal battle. Every basket, a tribute to the women who raised him. It didn't take long for the scouts to show up. Kentucky, North Carolina, Kansas, they all wanted Anthony. But he had something the others didn't understand: roots. Instead of going to a traditionally powerful university, he decided to stay close to home, and he chose the University of Georgia, not to follow in the footsteps of others, but to chart her own path, and to prove once again that pain and sacrifice are not the end. They are only the beginning of the legend. University career in Georgia. When Anthony Edwards announced that he would be playing for the University of Georgia, the college basketball world stopped. How could the country's top prospect choose a program with no tradition, no recent titles, and far from the spotlight of Kentucky, Duke, or North Carolina? The answer was far from the court. It was at home. Anthony wanted to be close to his family, and he wanted to make history where no one expected him to. And then there was Tom Crean, the coach who had already polished the likes of Dwayne Wade and Victor Oladipo. Crean saw something rare in Edwards, a brute force with the potential to dominate the game. And Anthony believed in him. In his debut, the impact was immediate. 24 points and a silent warning to the NCAA. He was different, but it was against Michigan State that the world really stopped to watch. Facing one of the biggest powers in the country, Edwards exploded with 37 points, turning the second half around almost single-dash handily. IT was like watching a superstar emerge in real time. All season long, he was Georgia's engine. 19.1 points, 5.2 rebounds, 2.8 assists per game, leading the team in almost everything. Throws created out of nothing, explosive dunks, improbable plays. The physicality was that of an NBA player, the confidence of a veteran, but the path wasn't perfect. The criticisms came: lapses of focus, hasty decisions, uneven defensive effort. In some games, he seemed to carry more than he could handle, and in others, he seemed to disconnect. It was the weight of being a star in a team with no structure. It was the pressure of having to prove himself every game. Still, no one could deny what they saw. Anthony Edwards was a phenomenon, and most importantly, he was just getting started. At the end of the season, the decision was inevitable. He declared himself for the NBA draft, and on November 18th, 2020, the promise came true. Anthony Edwards was chosen as the first overall pick by the Minnesota Timberwolves. From the backyards of Atlanta to the top of the draft, from pain to glory, from Ant-Man to superstar in the making, and the world was finally beginning to understand. This wasn't just talent, it was destiny. Beginning in the NBA, the star awakens. 2020 to 2021. Anthony Edwards' NBA debut in 2020 came surrounded by huge expectations and also doubts. As the first pick in the draft, he carried the weight of a college year full of ups and downs, as well as questions about his defensive focus and intensity. But those who knew him knew Edwards wasn't there to please. He was there to dominate. The 2020-21 season got off to an atypical start, with strict protocols due to the pandemic and empty gyms. With no summer league and a shortened preseason, the freshmen were thrown straight into the fire. Even so, Edwards soon showed his explosiveness, athletic strength, and offensive confidence, becoming one of the Minnesota Timberwolves' main weapons alongside stars like Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell. He finished the year with averages of 19.3 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 2.9 assists, delivering memorable performances, like the 42 points against the Phoenix Suns that proved he was more than just an ordinary rookie. Off the court, his charisma and authenticity won over fans and the media, making him a sensation on social media. Despite finishing runner-up for the Rookie of the Year award behind LaMelo Ball, for many Wolves fans there was no doubt Edwards was the future of the franchise. In his second year, Edwards came back more mature and with an even more imposing physique, 1.98 m and a 2.06 m wingspan, combining power and refined skill. His shooting gained consistency, his reading of the game improved, and his average rose to 21.3 points per game, with gains in rebounds and steals. More than numbers, his presence on the court became decisive. At the age of 20, he was the team's main offensive reference, capable of creating his own shots and scoring in transition, as well as an emerging leader of a young team that was once again dreaming of the playoffs. In 2022, in the playoffs against the Memphis Grizzlies, Edwards shone with averages of 25.2 points in the series, including a 36-point performance in Game 1, showing a maturity and calmness worthy of veterans. Despite the elimination, the NBA and fans were already recognizing him as a rising star. Sponsors were approaching him. His image as one of the young faces of the league was being consolidated, and his hunger for victories was only increasing. The boy who once trained sleeping on the floor at school was now the hope and future of the Timberwolves, and he couldn't wait to show what was yet to come: consolidation as a star. By the third season, 2022-23, Anthony Edwards was no longer just the future of the Timberwolves. He was the present. At just 21, he had made it clear that he had what it took to lead a franchise, and the challenge now was to confirm his greatness in a full season. From the first few months, his progress was evident. Edwards began to command Minnesota's offense, even alongside veteran stars. His averages rose to 24.6 points, 5.8 rebounds, and 4.4 assists per game, showing not only efficiency as a scorer, but also maturity in distribution and defense, where he stood out as one of the best perimeter scorers in the league. The reward came quickly: his first selection for the All-Star Game, a milestone that officially placed him among the elite. And he didn't disappoint, playing with the same confidence and boldness against the best in the world, in the playoffs. Edwards made an even bigger leap. Against the mighty Denver Nuggets, favorites for the title and led by MVP Nikola Jokic, he shone in the decisive moments. Game 2, 41 points, the most ever scored by a Wolves player in a playoff game. Game 3, 36 points, keeping the team alive in the series. Game 5, 34 points, with decisive plays at the end, showing cold blood. These performances took him to a new level. Edwards was no longer just a promising youngster, but a reliable, explosive star capable of deciding big games. The NBA took note. Analysts started citing him among the best shooting guards in the league. Opponents saw him as different, and fans around the world recognized an inevitable force. More than talent, Anthony showed the personality of a protagonist. He didn't shirk responsibility, but seemed to feed off it. Despite being eliminated by Denver, who would go on to become champions, Edwards left the series as one of the big names of the playoffs. The message was clear. He was one of the faces of the NBA's future, and that future was coming faster than many had imagined. 2023-24 season, an explosion as a superstar. The 2023-24 season confirmed what everyone already suspected. Anthony Edwards isn't just a rising star, he's an NBA superstar. Under his command, the Minnesota Timberwolves had their best campaign in over 20 years, finishing the regular season with an incredible 56 wins, a giant leap for a franchise marked by years of instability. Anthony was the driving force behind this success, delivering averages of 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. His shooting became more efficient, his ball control more refined, and his defensive impact even more solid. In the playoffs, Edwards simply exploded. In the first round, the Wolves swept the Phoenix Suns, something that hadn't happened in 2 decades. Edwards surpassed franchise legend marks, racking up an impressive streak of games with 30-plus points. In the second round, in an epic battle against Nikola Jokic's Denver Nuggets, he took responsibility in the decisive games. With dominant performances in Games 6 and 7, he led the series turnaround and took Minnesota to the conference finals for the first time in 20 years, a historic milestone that reignited the city's passion for basketball. Although they were eliminated by the Dallas Mavericks, Edwards came out of the season with absolute respect, consolidated as one of the most feared names in the league and a true face of the NBA's new generation. More than numbers, this season has shown that Edwards is a born leader. The boy who overcame tragedy now inspires an entire city and carries the hope of a franchise hungry for glory. The road to the title is open, and he knows it's only the beginning. The future is now. At just 23, Anthony Edwards has already established himself as one of the NBA's biggest stars. But he's far from reaching his peak. His body keeps getting stronger, and his skills continue to evolve rapidly. Competing at the same level as the league's best, Edwards combines talent, hard work, charisma, and game intelligence, ingredients that put him in contention for MVP awards and perhaps the title. His impact goes far beyond the court. He represents a new face of the NBA, combining style, authenticity, and a real connection with the fans. More than a promise, Anthony is already an imposing reality. If he keeps up the pace, he'll lead the Timberwolves to the franchise's first championship and eternalize his name among the legends of basketball. For the basketball world, the best is yet to come.